Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty stashes. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. Let's go. Our first player, Miles Sanders. So I think people are mostly cutting Miles Sanders. I've seen him on waivers in a lot of shallower Dynasty leagues. And while I understand why you would do that, I would say that I usually don't like to cut these types of running backs. So let's look at why. In 2019, he started off his career as a rookie with 179 carries, 818 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4.6 yards a carry, and 50 catches, 509 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he was great in the receiving game as a rookie. Unfortunately, we never saw that again, even though he had pretty good rushing efficiency over the next 3 years. In 2020, 164 carries, 867 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5.3 yards a carry, 28 catches for 197 yards in just 12 games. Then in 2021, he only managed 12 games again, but he had 5.5 yards a carry. The problem is he didn't score any touchdowns at all. And he just had 26 catches. So he really wasn't usable for fantasy despite the high efficiency. But then in 2022, in his walk year for the Eagles, contract year, he had his best season. 259 carries, 1,269 yards, and 11 touchdowns, 4.9 yards a carry. So that's all great. High volume, high yardage, a lot of touchdowns, and very efficient. Still only 20 catches for 78 yards. So he was not used in the receiving game. But that was just 2 years ago. Then, of course, last year, he signs the big contract with the Panthers. And, well, it went about as badly as it could. Just about along with everything else on the Panthers outside of Adam Thielen. In 16 games, he managed 129 carries, lost the starting job to Chuba Hubbard, 432 yards, 1 touchdown, 3.3 yards per carry, which is awful, and 27 catches for 154 yards, actually better than he did in 2022, oddly, as a receiver. Now, Sanders is still on the Panthers. He's totally forgotten about. And we know that they also drafted Jonathan Brooks in the second round. But is Brooks going to be ready to play week 1? I'm not so sure about that. I know that Sanders is often linked in a trade to the Cowboys. They still have Chuba Hubbard, but I don't know when Brooks is going to be ready. I think he'll be ready to play week 1. But recent news about his injury recovery has been a little bit more bearish. So we'll see how that all works out. But what I know is that Miles Sanders has the ability to take a lot of touches, has the ability to score touchdowns, and have some efficiency in the rushing game. So there's no risk in investing in him. Don't pay anything to get him. We're talking about a player you pick up off waivers. But these are the types of running back stashes we want. If we get in a situation where Miles Sanders is the starter for that week, you know that you'll be able to play him. So, yeah, he's a stash. But I will say, usually once running backs are done, they're done. So that's why I don't have him higher in my rankings, because he really looked bad last year. Now, next player, Jauan Jennings. Now, Jauan Jennings, I think, is a player who's kind of gone under the radar. He's had a decently successful career, but he's been kind of buried on the 49ers depth chart. In 2021, 24 catches, 282 yards, 5 touchdowns on 38 targets, 1.5 catches and 17.6 yards a game. And 2022 was his best year, 35 catches, 416 yards and a touchdown, 56 targets, 2.2 catches and 26 yards a game. And then last year, just 19 catches, 265 yards and a touchdown, 33 targets, 1.5 catches, and 20.4 yards per game. But as we know, Jennings signed a 2-year, $15.39 million extension with $10.54 million guaranteed this offseason. Brandon Ayuk is in trade rumors. Deebo Samuel, kind of the same, with injury issues at times. Ricky Pearsall was just placed on the NFI list, non-football injury list. And although it's not supposedly serious, Jennings had 2 solid games in the playoffs, including in the Super Bowl. So, yes, I have him at wide receiver 109. It probably takes a trade and injuries, but we know that if Jennings is on the field, as somehow one of the top 2 wide receivers that week, we'll be able to play him because the 49ers system is great. He has the talent, and he's shown at times that he can be relevant. Again, these are stashes and deep shots. You just have to find a way that they can be relevant in a long shot scenario. So that's what we're talking about here. Just a player I would roster in the absolute deepest of leagues. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month. And I also have Patreon video roster reviews, which are only available for patrons. I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who join. And if you want, the Discord is where we're going to discuss Brandon Ayuk, breaking news, anything exciting, start sit. All of that will take place in the Patreon Discord, only available for patrons. And those discussions will not take place anywhere else, not the YouTube comments, not Twitter, only on the Patreon. So I really hope more people decide to sign up. With that said, let's get into our next player. Hunter Renfrow. So this is actually going to be related to some news we're going to discuss later. But Hunter Renfrow has had an interesting career. Basically, under John Gruden, he was great. And then once Josh McDaniels came in, he was nothing. So in 2019, as a rookie, in 13 games, 49 catches, 605 yards, 4 touchdowns on 71 targets, 3.8 catches, and 46.5 yards a game. Pretty solid. Then 2020, very similar type of production. Pretty much across the board, very similar. But then in 2021, he broke out. 103 catches. I think if I told you that Hunter Renfrow had a season with 103 catches, you wouldn't believe me. But it's true. It did happen. 1,038 yards, 9 touchdowns, 128 targets, and 6.1 catches and 61.1 yards a game. So you would think year 3, he was pretty good in the first 2 years. Year 3 was a breakout. That's the start of something exciting in his career. Unfortunately, that was not at all the case. Josh McDaniels came in and, well, he did not like Hunter Renfrow. He didn't like him at all. 36 catches for just 330 yards, 2 touchdowns on 50 targets, 3.6 catches, and 33 yards a game. So essentially, he did nothing. There were some injuries, but a lot of it was Josh McDaniels just not liking him. And then last year, kind of the same. He was not really used. 25 catches, 255 yards, 0 touchdowns, 37 targets, and 1.5 catches and 15 yards a game. He wasn't used at the beginning with Josh McDaniels. And then when Antonio Pierce came in, Antonio Pierce chose to focus more on players that might be there when Antonio Pierce is the coach this year, which did not include Hunter Renfrow. So they were always going to cut him. So they didn't decide to give Hunter Renfrow a lot of playing time. They looked more at Trey Tucker. Now, what is the situation for Hunter Renfrow? He's still a free agent, which is kind of surprising to me because he's still a good slot receiver. I mean, you can see from the tape and the route running that he can still get open. He's not washed. Now, the main place he's been linked recently is the Minnesota Vikings. Very timely with that, considering recent news that we will talk about. Renfrow's still just 28 years old. A lot of teams need wide receiver, though. The Vikings are not the only one. So there are plenty of places where he might be a fit. There could always be injuries. The Cowboys would be another place where he might fit in. But there are a lot of teams. I'm surprised he hasn't signed. I have him at wide receiver 116. I do think he signed somewhere. It's possible he have a bit of value elsewhere. And I'm just not ready to cut him yet. But honestly, I get how this kind of seems like a lot of hopium. You know, his best season was a couple of years ago. But again, these stashes are deeper players. We're talking about deep players. So we have to try to mine value from the absolute depths of despair. So this is why Hunter Renfrow is on my list. Unfortunately, now we're going to pivot into something not as exciting or, you know, a little bit more of a sad natured conversation, talking about Jordan Addison's DUI arrest. So this happened, I think, a few days ago, but because I recorded my Monday video before that news was posted, and then yesterday I wanted to drop an instant video on Brandon Ayuk, I haven't had a chance to talk about this on the channel. So first of all, this arrest, you know, where he was stopped in the lane on the highway asleep is totally unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. Why is it totally unacceptable? One, it's totally unacceptable as it is. I mean, you should not be asleep on a highway ever. Well, why are you asleep blocking a lane on a highway? That's crazy. But secondly, his teammate, rookie Kyrie Jackson, was killed just a week prior to this by a drunk driver. So there's no excuse for Jordan Addison, and no way he could be unaware of the potential consequences. He was very aware. Now, when it comes to discipline from the NFL, PR is all that matters, right? I mean, I can want whatever I want to happen, but when it comes to what the NFL actually does for discipline, PR is all that they care about. So since it's all that they care about, this situation, the way that it is, doesn't help his case. What also doesn't help his case was his driving arrest last year. There wasn't any punishment for that, but it does show that he has a pattern of this type of behavior, which I think makes it more likely he gets a suspension over none at all. Now, in redraft, I moved him down 2 spots and down a tier. I think there's far more risk. In general, DUI suspensions are mostly cut and dry in the NFL. It's usually a 3-game suspension. Jordan Addison is not a superstar, and I'm just willing to miss out on him. I'm willing to miss out. It's okay. I don't think I want him really if there's a 3-game suspension in there. I think moving him down 2 spots and down a tier is about right. And also, Jordan Addison is not Justin Jefferson. The Vikings could just decide that they are upset with Jordan Addison, that they don't want to give him as much targets or whatever. He's not like beyond reproach as a talent. So I moved him down a few spots. In Dynasty, I moved him down 5 spots from wide receiver 22 to wide receiver 27. I have some concerns about the long-term trajectory of his career. As I said, this was his 2nd driving violation. And I will say, and I always disliked this, but it happened with Rashee Rice, and it happened again with Jordan Addison. Coming into the NFL, there were, I don't know what to say, rumors, whispers, unspecified character concerns with Jordan Addison, which might have been the case. So I hate that maybe I have to start paying attention to that because I really don't like doing that with rumors or things that don't have any evidence. But this is the 2nd time this offseason where that's occurred. So for me, I'd rather just not spend the high-end dynasty capital on Jordan Addison. I moved him essentially to the bottom of his tier instead of near the top where I had him before. Now, coincidentally, one of my patrons recently did a dynasty trade with Jordan Addison. So it was a 12-team Superflex, start 10, including 3 wide receivers, no bonuses. Acquired Jordan Addison for Chris Godwin and Hollywood Brown. So before the issues, I think I would have easily taken Jordan Addison here. Afterwards, it's significantly riskier. I think I'd lean toward Addison. I really don't have any interest in acquiring him. The main reason I'd still probably lean toward Addison is that I don't really want Hollywood Brown. I've heard that Rashee Rice's suspension may be pushed back to 2025 because the legal process is going to take a while. The suspension's still coming, but it might be in 2025, which would be after Hollywood Brown's 1-year free agency deal with the Chiefs is up, which means I'm a lot less interested in Hollywood Brown because he might not gain the dynasty value that people were hoping. So that's kind of my thoughts on this. Now, I also had a second Patreon question. Acquired Ricky Pearsall and Trey Benson for Ray Davis, Zach Charbonnet, Tajay Spears, Daniel Bellinger. Same 12-team Superflex format. Pearsall might have some added value with the Ayuk news, but he's now on the NFI list. Either way, I'd much rather have Benson or Pearsall than any of the pieces on the other side. So I would take the Benson side rather easily for the upside, especially that Benson provides. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, starts it, and more. And every sign up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.